Welcome to our session on values, ethics and nursing practice. The learning goals for this module are to explore personal beliefs, values and attitudes, to describe the difference between legal and ethical obligations, to identify the 7 ethical values determined by the College of Nurses of Ontario, to reflect on the ethical obligations for nurses, and to apply College of Nurses practice standards for ethics to ethical situations. So why study ethics? According to Socrates, the unexamined life is not worth living. Ethical nursing practice is based on ethical knowledge, and ethical knowledge development begins with ethical knowing. As we grow up, we become more aware of our values and beliefs and choose those we hold to be important. We learn values and develop beliefs through our observation of family, friends, community, and the world. Personal values provide us with our sense of individuality, and societal values are what we also follow in order to be accepted into our chosen community. Our attitude is how we feel about something or someone, and is founded on what we believe or value. There are 2 parts to this week's lecture, activities and learning. Part 1. You'll watch this video lecture and you will need to review the listed resources before or during the video. To accompany this video lecture is a worksheet posted on Blackboard under week 5. This worksheet will have questions to answer linked to the video. The video is set up to allow you to move at your own pace through the content and is designed to match 3 hours of classroom content along with pre-reading and post-reading activities you would normally do. Watch this video lecture and as you progress through it, pause the video periodically to examine, reflect on or analyse the information presented. Part 2 of this week's activities requires you to go to the College of Nurses of Ontario website. This link has been provided on this slide. The College of Nurses has created an online learning module for ethics. There are 4 chapter videos. Each of these videos is designed to help you navigate and understand the practice standard ethics. The first chapter video is ethical values and lasts 17 minutes. The second is maintaining commitments, 8 minutes. The third is working through ethical situations in nursing practice, 9 minutes, and the final chapter video is called Test Yourself, and it lasts for 10 minutes. Completing this will help you prepare for the upcoming midterm examination and long-term educate you about the ethical obligations and expectations for nurses in Ontario. Although you may choose to complete these 2 activities, my lecture video with worksheet and the CNO learning module in any order, I would suggest you watch my lecture video first and then complete the CNO's learning module. In 1978, Barbara Carper published her seminal work identifying 4 patterns of knowing in nursing. We will be examining these in more depth at a later period in this course. One of these patterns that she described was ethics, and she considered this to be the component of nursing focused on matters of what ought to be done, and that nursing involves making moment-to-moment judgments. Kozier lists 4 activities nurses must do in order to ensure they are providing safe client care. These are: 1. To learn what ethics means to nurses in nursing practice. 2. To reflect on personal and societal values. 3. To examine how personal and societal values influence attitude and decision making. And 4. To anticipate and plan for ethical problems that may arise in practice. Values clarification. The first thing to do when understanding ethics is to clarify personal values. Review values clarification on page 74 to 77 of your Kozier textbook. Follow the described examples. You may choose to pause the video at this time. What would you do? In 2008, a propane explosion in Toronto rocked the city. Blasts were heard over 10 kilometres away. This is the video link to one videotaped image of it. Read the Toronto Star article on your worksheet and answer the questions on the worksheet related to what you read and saw. Pause the video at this point to complete this, or continue on and do this at a later time. What are your values? What do you think? Here's an example. Consider the new vaccine being advertised to prevent human papillomavirus in young girls. How do you personally feel about sexual activity before marriage or as a teenager? How do you feel about immunisations in general and about the HPV vaccination in particular? What cultural or religious values might be influencing your decision? Does this immunisation imply that sex for teenagers is okay? Morality. Morality is our day-to-day living expression of what we believe to be right and good. Our beliefs about what constitutes morality is deeply embedded in our character and reflects our values. The task of acquiring self-knowledge may be expressed as values. In nursing, we use the term value rather than moral beliefs, and nursing values are very complex. Values. People hold values about work, family, religion, politics, money, and relationships. These values are derived from cultural, societal, and relationship influences and become interpreted into personal values. Values are based on our beliefs and reflected in our attitudes and behaviours. Our family can strongly influence values, for example, how children are raised, how they're expected to interact with adults, religious affiliation, what is considered to be right or wrong, political affiliation, smoking, alcohol use, even family dinners and get-togethers can all reflect values. Culture also strongly influences values. Cultural values develop as a result of a person's social setting and exposure. An example of this might be the members of the Utah Mormon Church, who support and practice polygamy, one man and many wives, and polyandry, one woman and many husbands. Individual experience can also change and influence values. For example, someone who did not have in the past strong feelings about drinking and driving may become an advocate for anti-drinking driving campaigns when someone close to them dies as a result of this. How are your values established? What influenced and still influences your values? Beliefs and attitudes. Attitudes are cognitive opinions and emotional feelings about things, and they reflect what we like or dislike about something or someone. Beliefs reflect ideas and assumptions that we believe to be true, but they do not have to be based on fact. Values clarification. To understand, to understand and work with clients, nurses must understand their own personal values. By understanding our own values, we are better able to understand those of our clients and co-workers. The goal of values clarification is to promote effective nurse-client communication and interrelationships. Values clarification is the process of examining and reflecting on one's own personal values. And the result of this is greater self-awareness and personal insight. Understanding one's values can help when value conflict arises between perhaps a nurse and a colleague, a nurse and a client, or nurse and institution. Values clarification plays a major role in helping the nurse resolve these types of dilemmas. And nurses must consider their own values and beliefs and utilize nursing ethics to ensure all relevant considerations are thought of prior to making a decision. Values clarification helps the nurse better advocate for the client. On the worksheet, complete questions 1 to 6 that are on pages 69 to 71 of Cooper, and then complete the activity described in Table 5.2 on page 76 of your Kozier. You can pause the video at this time to complete them or continue on and do them at a later time. Values clarification is an important first step when working with the client to establish realistic care goals. This allows for effective collaboration between nurse and client. It allows for identification of inconsistent or contradictory behaviour by the client, which may indicate conflicting values, and this limits effective goal planning. And the nurse must be careful not to offer personal opinion or place his or her values onto the client, even if asked. A personal philosophy consists of what one believes about rights and freedom, what constitutes good and harm, and responsibilities. It includes what one expects from self and others and what one values or holds important. Many of our views come from inside, that is, our meaning perspectives. Each philosophy provides a unique view of nursing practice. Creating a personal philosophy about the type of nurse you want to be can be an important first step to identifying what will be the foundation to your nursing practice. Using your list of values and meaningful events and situations in your life, you perhaps begin to write your own philosophy of nursing. Consider the following. What values do you hold important? What values do you believe to be important to nursing? What type of nurse do you want to be? Moral theories and ethical principles. The principles of ethics. Please define the following terms. You can do them now or at a later time. They are on your worksheet. Ethics is the study of what is considered to be right or wrong and is governed by principles, theories, rules, codes, and laws. It often has lists of duties and contains descriptions of ethical behaviour. Ethics has been described like the head work, while values or morality has been described as the heart work. Therefore, to practice nursing requires personal knowledge of how morality and ethics interrelate. Ethical knowledge can provide a basis for judging and evaluating moral and ethical standards and behaviour. Nurses must utilise the code of ethics that has been developed to guide their nursing practice. Ethical theory. Please review the moral theories in your textbook and complete the assigned worksheet activities. Ethical theory in practice. Take a look at this example on page 79 of Kozier to help you better apply the ethical principles that you're reading about to nursing practice. Biomedical ethics. These ethical health decision principles are based on the concepts of autonomy, beneficence, non-malfeasance, justice, fidelity, and veracity. Review the meanings for these terms and examine the examples provided. Complete questions 7 to 12 on your worksheet based on these. Principle-based ethics plus relational ethics equals nursing ethics. Take a look at the top 10 challenges facing the Canadian public. What do your personal values say about these issues? That is, how do you personally feel about these? Now consider the bioethical medical principles. What ethical issues do you see present in each scenario? There are certain factors to consider. And to make it easier, considering ethical issues, nurses can reflect on the following factors: the medical indications, the patient preferences, quality of life, and contextual features. Medical indications require that healthcare providers examine the benefit and risk of harm or harm that may result from care or treatment. For example, consider chemotherapy. Although it may reduce the size of the tumour, it may damage the immune system, increasing the risk for infection. Patient preference, for example, is based on the ethical principle of autonomy. The degree to which a person may have autonomy is impacted by a number of factors such as age, culture, mental health, and cognitive function. When considering patient preference, it is important to consider the family's preferences as well. However, ultimately it is the role of the nurse to act as the patient's advocate. Quality of life is a subjective experience and reflects the patient, family, and healthcare providers' belief about what is important. Values clarification is particularly important when we consider quality of life. Only the patient can define what quality of life means to them. If the patient is unable to contribute to the point of view, or contribute their point of view, for example, if they're comatose or mentally incapacitated, then the family and care providers must determine what quality of life might mean for them. Contextual features is the final factor to consider. It is the context of the situation, the individuality of each and every situation and patient. Each time the nurse is faced with an ethical dilemma or situation, he or she must reflect and examine it in its own right. Although there may be many similarities across situations, in order to effectively care for each patient, the nurse must consider the situation as unique. Nursing Code of Ethics. Knowing about ethics is not the same as developing an ethical nursing practice. It is a skill that requires intention to learn, knowing personal values, exposure to practice dilemmas, a skillful teacher, and dialogue with others. And nursing actions have the potential for harm or good. Patients are ill, and this does make them vulnerable. Nursing actions affect patient well-being, and nurses must act in the best interests of the patient, as we have the public trust. The entry to practice competencies for RPN in Ontario's, in the assumptions, state that entry-level RPNs are prepared to practice ethically in situations of health and illness with individuals across the lifespan. Entry-level RPNs are prepared to practice ethically with individual clients, families, groups, and communities. And entry-level RPNs have a knowledge base in ethics. The profile of the entry-level RPN is that one of providing safe, competent, and ethical nursing care. There's even a whole set of ethical practice competencies, and these are from number 63 to number 83. 63 to 83 in the practice guideline. The College of Nurses of Ontario has created a practice standard called Ethics. In this, they state client well-being, client choice, privacy and confidentiality, respect for life, maintaining commitments, truthfulness and fairness are what each nurse must value. The College of Nurses of Ontario Ethical Practice Standards. At this point you can choose to stop this video and go to watch the College of Nurses online module on ethics, or you may wish to continue to the end of the video and then review the CNO learning module at that time. Legal accountabilities and ethical practice. There are a number of laws governing healthcare and nursing. Nurses must understand the legal expectations governing nursing practice. Lack of knowledge does not protect the nurse against prosecution. Two particular important acts are the Regulated Health Professions Act and the Nursing Act. Nurses must consider the legalities first and the ethics second. Regulated Health Professions Act and the Nursing Act. The Regulated Health Professions Act and the Nursing Act outline the scope of practice for regulated professions in Ontario. They describe specific acts to be considered unsafe if performed by unregulated care providers, and they state that only certain acts may be performed by specific regulated care providers. The duty of care is an important principle in nursing. It refers to the legal obligation to act or not act in any way that would harm another person. Nurses have a duty not to harm their patients in any way and should act to prevent foreseeable harm. Think back on the Nicole Pampona story. How does the duty of care apply in this situation? What should the nurse have done? Legal issues. Negligence. There are 4 elements present for negligence to apply. First, the duty to care. Second, a failure to comply. Third, demonstrable suffering or injury. And fourth, suffering or injury as a result of the negligent conduct of the nurse. Assault is an unjustifiable attempt or threat to touch another person without consent that results in immediate harmful or threatening contact. Battery is the lawful, harmful and unwarranted touching of another or carrying out of threatened physical harm. Even if the intention is beneficent, that is for good, and the outcome positive, it can be still considered battery. Think, for example, of giving an injection to an agitated patient who's refused consent. This battery can be defended against in 2 ways: necessity, i.e. medically necessary care, and consent, expressed or implied. So the patient who came to the emergency department seeking help, who has maybe become agitated, has implied that their consent was there when they came for seeking help. Privacy. The Personal Information and Protection of Electronic Documents Act and the Personal Health Information Protection Act require protection of information obtained through the professional patient-nurse relationship. The CNO's practice standard, Confidentiality and Privacy, Personal Health Information, explains and outlines the nurse's obligation regarding these. Legal responsibility of nursing students. It is important that you review the Kozier text, page 108 to 109, which describes the legal responsibility for nursing students. Take a look at the errors listed opposite. Consider what you would do to prevent that error in future. Finally, values clarification is important for both the nurse and the client. Ethical principles outline what is good in our society, and nursing actions are guided by policies, legal requirements, and ethical standards of practice.